saw an extraordinary US operation in Venezuela. Now Trump is talking about Greenland. And just today, he also said the US would start doing land strikes in Mexico against the drug cartels. Here he was on Fox News.
We are going to start now hitting land with regard to the cartels. The cartels are running Mexico. It's very, very sad to watch and see what's happened to that country. But the cartels are running, and they're killing 250, 300,000 people in our country every single year.
That is why I call on the people of Mexico. When from abroad, it is dictated who is guilty, and who is not. When there is an attempt to pressure our institutions from the outside, when the idea is normalized that another country can intervene in matters that only concern Mexicans, we are no longer talking about cooperation. We are talking about interference.
As you can see, Mexico is not standing with Trump. This could get really ugly and Trump may want to listen. Run the next clip.
In Mexico, let it be heard, loud and clear, does not accept interference. We are a free, libre, independiente, and sovereign country.
Pause there. That was not diplomacy. That was Mexico drawing a line in permanent ink. This message is definitely for Trump. Go ahead and hit that subscribe button, guys, as we go deeper into all things politics. Now check out this next clip.
Es necesario reafirmar.
It is necessary to reaffirm that in Mexico, the people are in charge and that we are a free, independent, and sovereign country.
Cooperación sí.
Cooperation, yes. Subordination and intervention, no.
Son formas de hablar del presidente Trump.
These are ways of speaking of President Trump. I don't believe in invasion. I don't even think it's something they are taking very seriously.
Sea algo que ellos lo estén tomando muy en serio.
But we express it at he said it several times in the calls we've had. There have been almost 14 calls, if I remember correctly.
Las llamadas que hemos tenido han sido casi 14 llamadas.
He has insisted on several occasions that the United States military be able to enter Mexico.
You guys can see she is being very stern. This has to be because Trump thinks he can just say and do what he wants and thinks everyone needs to just go with it. Continue the clip.
En que el ejército de Estados Unidos pueda.
And we have said no very firmly. First, because we defend our sovereignty. And second, because it is not necessary.
Defendemos nuestra soberanía. Y segundo, porque no es necesario.
She is clearly dropping the hammer on Trump, letting him know that Mexico does not need his interference. Let's run the next clip.
The 15-minute phone conversation took place here in Mexico's presidential palace, where Claudia Sheinbaum was accompanied by her foreign minister and her chief of security. Trump and Sheinbaum have spoken before over disagreements regarding immigration, tariffs, and border security. But this is the first conversation following his comments that he would now, quote, start hitting land with regard to the cartels.
In general, he insists on the U.S. military being involved, and we always tell him that is not necessary. We are very clear about defending our territory, plus our collaboration is currently working.
Sheinbaum also pointed to a 50% reduction in the amount of fentanyl crossing the border over the last year. And while she didn't mention it directly, Trump's other big point of contention, illegal immigration, has been brought largely under control on the U.S.-Mexico border, where the number of apprehensions has experienced a sharp drop over the last year.
He recognized the work that we've done, but said he thinks more can be done. I said, definitely, but the important thing is to keep working together and maintaining this relationship around respect and collaboration.
2026 promises to be a key year for the bilateral relationship. The trade agreement shared by the U.S., Mexico, and Canada, critical economic allies, is set to be reviewed in the coming months. And experts agree if anything is going to deter Trump from taking any unilateral action in Mexican soil, it is the importance of that economic relationship between the neighboring nations. Claudia Sheinbaum's ability to temper Trump's threats has been lauded here in Mexico. She generally comes across as calm and measured in her interactions with the U.S. president, in stark contrast to his outbursts. But last week's attack on Venezuela was a game changer and presents Sheinbaum with a new challenge of finding a balance between appeasing Trump and categorically rejecting any U.S. military intervention in Mexico.
This is why Sheinbaum's warning matters. Not because it was loud, because it was clean. It cut straight through the fog. Mexico is saying the thing Washington hates hearing from any country it is used to pressuring. Cooperation is not submission. Security is not permission. Partnership is not control. And that is the line Trump keeps slamming into, like a man who thinks every border comes with a remote. He talks like pressure is policy. Pressure the border. Pressure the government. Pressure the trade relationship. Pressure the security apparatus. Pressure the election conversation. Push hard enough, and in his mind, the other country is supposed to bend, smile, and call it leadership. That is not diplomacy. That is political extortion wearing a flag pin. And Sheinbaum's message is basically, not here. Not with us. Not with Mexico's democracy. Because this is the part people need to understand. When a foreign power starts leaning into another country's internal politics, it never arrives wearing a villain cape. It arrives dressed as concern. It says it is about security. It says it is about corruption. It says it is about stability. It says it is about protecting democracy. But then somehow the pressure always points in the same direction, toward control, toward leverage, toward making sure the smaller country knows who is supposed to ask, who is supposed to answer, and who is supposed to obey. That is the old trick. Dress interference up as partnership, then act offended when somebody calls it what it is. Sheinbaum is refusing to play that game. That is why this speech hits harder than people want to admit. She is not begging for respect. She is not asking Washington to be polite. She is drawing a boundary. And boundaries are a problem for leaders who confuse power with ownership. Trump's whole foreign policy style is built around the belief that pressure solves everything. Threaten tariffs, threaten military action, threaten the relationship, threaten the economy, threaten the headlines, turn every conversation into a hostage negotiation, and then call it strength. But countries are not vending machines. You do not kick them until policy falls out. Mexico is not a side office of Washington. It is not a campaign prop. It is not a border backdrop. It is a sovereign country with its own voters, its own government, its own institutions, and its own right to decide what happens inside its democracy. That is why the word interference matters. It is not some soft diplomatic complaint. It is the alarm bell. Once outside pressure gets into the bloodstream of a democracy, everything starts to rot. Elections start looking suspicious. Opposition movements start looking foreign-backed. Policy decisions start looking purchased. Media narratives start looking imported. Suddenly, every internal debate has a foreign shadow standing behind it. And once people believe their democracy is being steered from the outside, trust collapses. That is not a small problem. That is how nations get poisoned slowly. Not with one giant invasion. With pressure, with money, with threats, with narratives, with officials pretending they are helping while their hands are on the steering wheel. So yes, Sheinbaum's warning matters because it is not just aimed at Trump. It is aimed at the entire ecosystem that thinks Mexico can be managed, pressured, corrected, or disciplined from the outside. Governments, donors, agencies, media machines, political operatives, billionaires with opinions and no accountability. She is telling all of them the same thing. Mexico is not available for remote control. And that is the part that makes this moment bigger than one speech. She is trying to slam the door before interference becomes normal, before every election comes with a foreign excuse attached, before every policy disagreement gets turned into a loyalty test to Washington. And whether Trump likes it or not, the message is brutally simple. Cooperation is welcome, respect is required, but control is off the table. Mexico is not asking for a handler. Mexico is not waiting for permission. And if Washington hears that as disrespect, then maybe the problem was never Mexico's tone. Maybe the problem was Washington thinking it had the right to be obeyed in the first place.